"I can make your daughter walk again," the beggar boy said. "What the millionaire did next will shock you." When the world's finest doctors failed to heal a millionaire's paralyzed daughter, a barefoot orphan with nothing but unshakable faith stepped forward. "I can make her walk again," he said. No medical degree, no miracles, just a quiet certainty. Was he a divine gift or a fleeting dream? The answer lies in today's tale. Before we continue to the story, let us know, where in the world are you listening from? The golden light of dusk draped itself over Bolden Creek, painting Austin in warm hues as it buzzed with evening life. A symphony of laughter and harmony of street performers. At the heart of this lively tableau sat Joe West, his tailored suit and gleaming wristwatch marking him as separate from the carefree crowd around him. The glow of his neglected smartphone screen faded unnoticed in his palm as he stared into the middle distance. By his side, Amanda sat motionless in her wheelchair, her small fingers curled tightly around the threadbare ears of a stuffed rabbit. The once bright eyes that used to sparkle with childhood wonder now held a hollow gaze. After the accident, Joe had moved mountains for her, chasing cures across continents, consulting specialists whose names carried depth in medical journals. Yet every door had closed with the same final verdict: she can never walk again. "Let's head home, sweetheart," Joe said softly, the words catching like a lump in his throat. The voice that answered wasn't his daughter's. "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." Joe spun toward the sound and found himself looking down at a child who seemed swallowed from the shadows of the city itself. The boy couldn't have been more than 10, his clothes hanging in tatters, his bare feet gray. But it was his eyes that arrested Joe, clear and steady, holding a certainty that belonged to someone mature. He introduced himself. "Hello, sir. My name is Ray Rodriguez," made no plea for money, simply stood there, solid as a pillar, waiting for Joe to give the answer. A bitter laugh escaped Joe's lips before he could stop it. "Doctors with wall full of degrees tell me it's impossible," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. He gestured at the boy's ragged clothes, the dirt-streaked face. "And you? What miracles are hiding in those empty pockets?" The boy, Ray, didn't shrink from the challenge. His voice was quiet but carried the weight. "Papers don't heal people, belief does." His gaze flicked to Amanda. "Hers, mine, maybe even yours, if you let it." Joe felt the tug at his sleeve before he saw it. Amanda's fingers clutched the fabric of his jacket with surprising strength. When he looked down, the spark in her eyes stole his breath, that burning hope he thought the accident had extinguished forever. "Please, Daddy." The words trembled on her lips, but the look she gave him was steady as sunrise. In that moment, Joe realized with a jolt that he wasn't just protecting his daughter from disappointment anymore. He was standing between her and hope itself. The words came. "1 hour," Joe ground out, the concession tasting strange on his tongue. "Not a minute more." The cherry tree rained pink blossoms on them as Ray created his makeshift sanctuary. Twigs became compass points. Pebbles formed constellations only he could read. When he pressed the black stone into Amanda's palm, Joe nearly intervened until he saw how naturally it settled into her grasp, like it had been waiting for her all along. "Feel the grass between your toes," Ray murmured. "Not how it was, how it will be." Joe watched, heart pounding, as Amanda's eyelids fluttered shut. A single tear escaped, catching the light as it traced her cheek. Then a gasp. Her fingers convulsed around the stone. "Daddy, I..." Her voice was barely a whisper. "It's like when you dip your toe in the pool, that first shiver before you jump in." Her eyes flew open, alight with something Joe hadn't seen since the accident. Not just hope, but knowing. The wheelchair sat motionless beneath her. The air left Joe's lungs in a rush, as if someone had punched him square in the chest. His shoes carried him forward without conscious thought, his pulse roaring in his ears. A dozen questions formed and died on his tongue. This wasn't something logic could dissect, not when Amanda's voice shimmered with that impossible, luminous hope. Dawn found Joe pacing his study, the boy's quiet certainty gnawing at him like a persistent toothache. By first light, he'd pulled strings. He asked for background checks of the little boy. When the report landed in his mail inbox, Ray Rodriguez, a kid survivor of fatal bus crash 3 years ago, got free treatment at Freddy's Orthopedics. The name and the details struck him like a physical blow. 3 years ago, one of his company's trucks had swerved across a center line. The corporate machine had taken a mass number of life. Settlements signed, the whole messy incident buried beneath layers of legal padding. The reports had claimed no survivors. The address on the report led him to a building that smelled of antiseptic and old dreams. Dr. Freddy didn't rise from his wheezing desk chair when Joe entered. The old man simply pushed his wire-rimmed glasses up his nose and said, "You must be Joe West." The notebook he thrust into Joe's hands was soft with use, its pages filled with a child's determined scrawl, alternating with the doctor's precise script. "That boy," Freddy said, tapping a gnarled finger against the cover, dragged himself back from hell 1 inch at a time. He was a lone survivor of that fatal accident 3 years ago. His milky eyes locked onto Joe's, for the same reason you're here now. Because some miracles need witnesses. Following week, the West Mansion invited Ray for the little girl's treatment. Amanda's radiant grin could have powered the entire city block. They transformed the greenhouse into a sanctuary of hope. Ray's unconventional tools, knotted ropes, sand-filled sacks, branches bent into arches, looked like discarded junk until you saw them in action. Until you watched Amanda's face light up with each tiny victory. A finger twitch, a toe curl, moments that would seem insignificant to anyone else became their private miracles. Then one day, Joe remembered the sound, Amanda's sharp cry cutting through the glass. Before anyone could react, Ray was there, his hands gentle as he supported her seizing muscles. Amber summoned Dr. Faroukson faster than a 911 call. "Enough of this madness," the physician boomed, black bag in hand. "You're torturing that child." But when Joe looked at his daughter, really looked, he didn't see defeat in her tear-streaked face. He saw something that terrified him more than her paralysis: determination. Her small hands fisted in his shirt as she gasped through the pain. "Daddy, please, he's helping." Ray stood motionless by the window, rainwater from his hair tracing paths down his cheeks like silent tears. Not pleading, not arguing, just waiting for judgment. Joe's voice emerged rough as gravel when he finally spoke. 14 days, he said, holding the doctor's furious gaze. "Then we'll know." The unspoken words hung heavier. Know if this was hope, or just another kind of cruelty. Ray's nod was barely perceptible, just the slightest dip of his chin, but it carried the weight of an unspoken promise. Amanda clutched the black stone tighter, its smooth surface warm against her palm, as if it had absorbed every ounce of her hope. Dr. Faroukson, with his white coat and clipboard, and Ray, with his frayed sleeves and quiet certainty, circled each other like wary wolves at first. But necessity forged an uneasy alliance. Faroukson's regimented stretches merged with Ray's whispered meditations. Imagine the sun on your back, the earth pushing up through your feet. Amanda gritted her teeth through the pain, her muscles trembling, her breath coming in sharp gasps. But she never quit. Not when her legs burned, not when tears streaked her face. Because something had taken root inside her, something stubborn and wild that Ray had planted, and it refused to die. Then came the afternoon that shocked everyone. The greenhouse was humid as Amanda, drenched in sweat, gripped the parallel bars. The staff had gathered, cooks still in aprons, gardeners with dirt under their nails. even Amber, her arms crossed but her eyes glistening. Joe stood frozen, his knuckles white around the back of a chair. 1, 2, 3. Amanda, let's go. For 3 heartbeats, she stood, truly stood, her bare feet pressed into the mat, her spine straight, her face turned toward the glass. The sound Joe made wasn't human. It was something raw, torn from a place deeper than grief. He collapsed to his knees, as if the weight of those 3 seconds had brought him to the ground. Across the room, Dr. Ferguson slowly removed his glasses, swiping at his eyes with the back of his hand. That evening, the dining hall, usually reserved for stiff, formal dinners, brimmed with laughter and clinking glasses. Joe raised a toast, his voice rough. Today, my daughter stood, not because of medicine, not because of money, because a boy who had every reason to hate us chose to believe instead. The staff erupted in cheers, but Amanda, seated beside Ray, simply slipped her hand into his and squeezed, once, twice. A silent language, all their own. That night, an envelope lay on Ray's bed, crisp and unopened, his name etched across the front in inked letters. He hesitated before picking it up, his fingers tracing the edges as if testing its reality. Inside, the papers were undeniably adoption documents, signed and sealed. Real. His breath caught as he scanned them again, his mind struggling to reconcile the words with the life he'd known. Then, the door creaked open. Joe stood there, his usual composed demeanor softened. Emotion thickened his voice as he spoke. "You brought my daughter back to life," he said. "Not just her body, her spirit. You gave her something I couldn't. Hope, laughter, the will to fight." He stepped closer, his gaze steady. "So let me give you something in return. A home. A family." Ray's throat tightened. Before he could respond, Amanda was there, her arms wrapping around him in wordless embrace. It wasn't gratitude, it was belonging. The kind of hug that left no room for doubt. "You're one of us now," whispered Amanda. From the doorway, Joe watched, his chest swelling with a feeling he hadn't known in years. Not since the first time he'd held Amanda. Wealth gave him power, but this was something else entirely. And Ray, he hadn't come for vengeance. He'd come to save himself. Because sometimes, the real miracle isn't healing the body. It's realizing you were never meant to be alone. This story reminds us that true healing doesn't come from wealth and science alone, but through love, faith, and courage. And help can arrive from unexpected places. Have you ever witnessed a moment that felt like a miracle? What happened? Do you believe that belief and hope can be as powerful as medicine? Why or why not? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. And make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really motivates us to come with more tales like this. For until then, stay blessed and remain kind.